But for me, a pickle is just about balance with the saltiness and the sweetness. And then a big one's just crunch. Like you just want, like if you're putting on a sandwich or something, you're putting it on there for tang and for texture. And so you need that crunch, you need that sweet tang.
This is The Producers. I'm Anthony Huckstep. After living in New York and embracing the deli culture, Joel Mevissen saw an opportunity for quality Australian pickled cucumbers. Over a couple of beers in the backyard with a good mate and chef, Calvin Lidden, they began working with a local farm network to develop and foster a local market for pickling cucumbers.
So at the moment, we're producing it in Caringbah, so in South Sydney. So we have, we're in like an industrial complex out there. So we've got 4 warehouses, which is a bit of a nightmare. So we've got one that's like cold storage, one that's production, one that's retail production, and one that's ambient storage. But we've just secured a site in just near the Southern Highlands, so just near Picton, which is a farm with a huge like airport kind of hangar shed on it, which we've started building our new production facility in, and then we're going to be farming out the front and the back of it. There's about 11 acres on the property. So that's really exciting for us, just because, you know, like we get our produce in from Queensland, from farmers that we work with there. But like it's just in this industrial complex, so it's just, you know, it can get a little bit soulless turning up there every day.
Food always played a huge part of Joel's life growing up, and a career in food felt like a natural extension of that.
Like from when I was a kid, my mum was always been in hospitality. You know, whether it's in a restaurant, like she managed restaurants, and then she's also done like lots of like deli style places where she's done, you know, she's like got charcuterie and fine cheeses. So I kind of grew up around that. Like, you know, I'd go to work with her and just be hiding under the counter and just eating like salamis and kind of French cheeses. That's probably my earliest food memories, was going to work with mum. I just think it's just like if you're into food, you're into food. Like basically everything around my life revolves around some form of food or drink. Like I'm not a chef, but like I cook a lot, and obviously Callie's a chef, so I get a lot of inspiration from him. But yeah, I love the lifestyle that food surrounds itself with, like just wine, and I kind of find it addictive. So.
Inspired by the incredible pickles in New York, Joel and Calvin began making their own in Calvin's tiny Surrey Hills home.
So Westmont Pickles started with me and my buddy Cal, and we're still just the 2 directors doing it. But basically how it began is I was living over in New York City for a few years. And so I've always loved, you know, briny things. Like I always loved pickled onions as a kid. But I got really into kind of the gherkin side of things, like the kosher dill pickles that you get in New York. And there's just like a pickle on the side of everything. And I was working hospitality over there, so I got really into just that tangy side of life. And then I came back and I was still working in hospo, and Callie, who was my friend from school, he had been a fine dining chef. Like, so he'd been chefing for a while, and then he got sick of that, so he became a graphic designer. And I hit him up and I was like, mate, I think this could work. Like I was doing the menu at a cafe, and we were putting pickles on the menu, and we were making it in-house. And this is like in 2012. And then, you know, I had lots of friends who were chefs and stuff, and I was talking to them, and they were pretty keen on getting like an Aussie pickle that was kind of like, you know, good quality and wasn't too sweet. So I talked to Callie, and, you know, kind of just used his abilities, like he's like chefing. Like, so he did the recipes, and then because he was the graphic designer now as well, he did all of the logos and stuff. So it kind of worked really well. And then we started producing in his backyard in Surrey Hills, which was pretty funny. Like, you know, he had like this tiny, as you can imagine, this tiny little terrace house with like, you know, this like 10 meter squared backyard. And we were just producing out there and selling just to mates who were chefs. Like we got kind of lucky because one of my mates was Pat Friesen, he was at Merivale at that time. So we kind of went straight into Merivale. Like our first customers was Merivale and Harris Farm. So like we just got super lucky with that kind of stuff. And also it was that time when like we hit that burger craze like just before. So we started making the pickles, and then the burgers just blew up in Sydney, well, obviously in Melbourne, and then Sydney followed suit. And so we just rode that wave, and it was really helpful for us. But that's pretty much how we started. We started in Callie's backyard in Surrey Hills. He's a chef, I'm a barista. That's it.
Having an idea was one thing, but finding the right locally produced cucumbers was challenging.
You know, like when we started Westmont, we quickly found out that there's no one really grows gherkins in Australia year round. It's not like there's no market for it. So there's the one guy who does McDonald's out in Griffith, so he has his own farm. And then you've got a few kind of guys in Sydney markets who might grow during the summer period, but there's no one growing gherkins year round in Australia. So it was really difficult for us to find the actual fruit was the hardest thing at the beginning, because to make a good pickle, you need really low water content in the fruit. And obviously Australia, we love our cucumbers, but we like them to be, you know, it's a salad cucumber that's the most available in Australia. And so when you pickle, say, something like a Lebanese or a continental cucumber, it just, like as the osmosis happens where the brine replaces the water in the fruit, because it draws so much water out, it just becomes, it's soggy, it's not crunchy. And so the biggest trial for us was trying to find a farm that was willing to, you know, put the investment in to put seeds in the ground. And so it's kind of like a catch-22, because you can't like show customers a really great product because the gherkin isn't there to pickle, but you can't grow the business to a point where a farm wants to to grow gherkins for you. Like, do you know what I mean? So like we kind of had to find a farm that would take a gamble with us and put some seeds in the ground. And at that point we were only, we were like 300 to 600 kilos a week, which, sounds like a lot, but it's for a farmer, it's just not really worthwhile. And so we found a group in Queensland who kind of believed in it enough, and they started growing it for us. And so we were taking about 500, 700 kilos a week. And then because we got that fruit that was an actual gherkin, we were able to go out and just grow the business because we had the quality there. So we could show chefs, what we had, and that it was better than what's on the market. And it was grown in Australia, which has always been our main selling point. Is like, this is Aussie, it's grown by Aussie farmers, we pickle it here, which has been really good for us. But yeah, so once the farm started doing that, then we kind of grew the business. But yeah, I said that would be the main hurdle, was just the produce. And then mistakes, like we're not food scientists. So like getting that brine right and getting consistency, especially when you're making it in a backyard in Surrey Hills, is quite difficult. So we had a lot of batches that didn't go well. Like I remember one of our first big clients as well was Hudson Meats, when they had quite a few stores. And we made this huge batch that took us forever to make, and it didn't go well. It wasn't pasteurized properly. And so it's just things like that, steep learning curves. But, you kind of only make those mistakes once.
There are different ways to pickle cucumbers, but Joel sticks to a vinegar-based brine.
So the pickling process for us, so we make a fresh pack pickle. So it's not fermented. It's got a vinegar-based brine, which we prefer. Like I love, like the traditional Polski Gorky pickles and stuff. But for what we do, we service burger restaurants and cheese platters and stuff. So we like the vinegar-based brine. So basically what it is we get the fruit in, then we wash and process it. So slice it in however it's going to be presented. And then we make our brine in 10,000 litre batches. And the brine is salt, tiny bit of sugar just to balance it out, and then vinegar. And so the salt we get from Olsen's, and the vinegar is Australian vinegar as well. And then basically what we do, we have two processes. We got our food service side of the business, which is our pails, we do a 5 kilo and a 20 kilo pail for like burger restaurants and pubs and clubs and stuff. And so for that process, we just pour the brine over hot. So we slice the gherkins into the bucket, pour the brine over hot, and then we just leave it in the cool room to go back down to ambient temperature. And then that is that product is refrigerated to make sure it's like super crunchy. And then our retail line, which you can find at like supermarkets and stuff, is the same kind of process. It's just the sliced gherkins go in the jar and then hot brine over the top. But then it goes through our pasteurizing tunnel to make it shelf stable to sit on the shelf.
As Joel explains, the product range is small, although they have some ideas in the works.
So the range we got at the moment, like it's still like just gherkins, really. Like we've really wanted to like make like, you know, branch out, but like, I don't know, the business at the moment, like we do have a lot of things happening, but at the moment it's just, we just have gherkins, and we have, so say in the food service side of things, we've got, you know, just different slices for different people. So like, you know, for Maryvale, we make a specific pickle for them, which is Jordan Toff's recipe. And so that's like a flat cut pickle. It's nice and thick, that has, you know, like onions and stuff in it. Then we do crinkle cut slices for people. We do whole pickles. We do half pickles. We do spear pickles. And then in the jars, we do like slices, halves. And it's just like, to be honest, it's just different flavor profiles that we're doing at the moment. Like we have a jalapeno pickle as well. And then we have a fermented hot sauce, which is a habanero fermented hot sauce. But like, you know, 95% of the business is just gherkins. So like there's a lot of room for us to bring some new products out there, but it's just been so much like learning and growing quickly. Like we have grown quite quickly. Like we're at, I said before, we started with about 600, like 500, 700 kilos a week. We're at about 12 ton of gherkins a week now. So it's like, and like we come from a food background, but we don't come from a manufacturing background. So it's learning how to do that in a consistent, sustainable way. And so we're kind of just at that point now. We're at a really sweet point in our business. Like things are ticking. We got a really good relationship with our farms. We've got this new exciting thing happening near Picton with our farm, where we can start growing a bit of our own gherkins. So yeah, like it's an exciting period where I think there might be room where we can introduce some new products, like, you know, some sauerkraut or pickled onions. You know, something that's not a green gherkin would be nice to see, I think.
Beyond pickle making, Joel sees the opportunity to grow their own produce too.
We have some friends who have started farms, or like who run kind of no-till, you know, market gardens and stuff. And then like I used to do carriage work markets, so I know Greg from Block 11. So he's like, we've been talking to him. But yeah, we're kind of just going to throw ourselves in it, just like we did with the pickles. Like just get in there with as much knowledge as we can, like kind of wrangle up, and then just learn quickly. So we're going to start off with just, you know, dillweed, because we go through a lot of dillweed. So we're going to set up a little greenhouse out the back, start with dillweed, and then get some seedlings happening for the gherkins, which we're thinking to put in around October-ish. So our growing period for that farm will be, I think, maybe October, but it might be November, all the way through to kind of like February. And then we'll be using more of our Queensland growers for the other periods of the year. But so the farm for us, it's about a few things. Like it is about supply. Like if we can have some of our own supply, that's really cool. But it's also just about learning more about that side of the business. Like at the moment, like we get this great produce in that these farmers in Queensland are making, and then we pickle it. But it's kind of like, I'd love to know more. It's like winemakers, you know, like you can get the grapes in and you can make great wine, but like to really wrap your head around it, you need to have your own kind of vineyard, and then you can really start making improvements with quality and like control and knowledge and stuff. So for us, it's just about learning more, and it's always just about making our product better. Like that's big for us.
When researching pickles, the sugar content of most pickles surprised Joel, and it's been a focus from the very beginning.
Like for me, it's just about balance. So when we first started, we went, you know, to the supermarkets and we bought every pickle on the shelf and we did tastings. And what we just found was like, it was just insane how much sugar is in pickles that we all get. It's like the sugar is more of the preservative in these pickles than the salt or vinegar, because it's so high. And so what we did was we dialed that down. Like we were going to do a completely sugar-free one, but I think the Australian palate is quite different to American. So we added a tiny bit just for balance. But for me, a pickle is just about balance with the saltiness and the sweetness. And then a big one's just crunch. Like you just want, like if you're putting on a sandwich or something, you're putting it on there for tang and for texture. And so you need that crunch, you need that sweet tang. And that's it for me. Like, and then just obviously from my side of the business, it's about consistency. Like I just want all the pickles to be the same. But that tang and crunch for me.
Although Westmont Pickles are available wholesale and in good food stores, Joel is upfront about where most of their pickles end up.
You know, at the end of the day, we make pickles. So like, it usually ends up on a burger. It's just like, you know, most of our business probably ends up on a burger or sandwiches. But we have some really great clients even within that. Like, you know, I mentioned Maryvale before, like they make a great burger. We've got Hector's Deli in Melbourne. They use it on their beef and pickles, which is a phenomenal sandwich. You know, like we have some really great clients. Probably the best, like one of the proudest moments I've seen the use of the pickle though was I was having a few martinis at the bar at Hubert. I saw one of the chefs walk by with one of our 20-kilo buckets, and I was like, it really hit the spot for me. I was like, okay, so Hubert's using our pickles. Like that's sick. Like, yeah, for me that was a big one, I think.
Running his own business suits Joel's personality, and it's given him drive and belief in what he's doing.
Like working for myself, I think that, you know, I've always been a bit like anti-establishment, I guess. Like I went to, like I grew up, my mum's a bit of a hippie, and I went to Steiner school. So I've always been kind of against the grain. And so like, it's been a struggle having a boss ever, to be honest. Like, and so just being my own boss is obviously really stressful, but it's also just, I find it like, I don't think I could have it any other way anymore. So it's changed my life in that aspect where like, you know, learning to be a boss has been a big one for me. Like, you know, I'm not so much, that's not really how I work, but Callie, you know, my business partner, he's really good with that stuff because I guess from being in the kitchen, he knows how to run things really well. But yeah, just having that freedom to like work on things that I want to work on and when I want to work on it. So sometimes, you know, I'll be working late into the night, but the next day I might just go surfing all day. You know what I mean? So it's about like kind of life balance for me. Like I love food. I love being connected to food. Like, so I love, you know, I talk most easily with chefs and hospo people. So being like, because I kind of do most of the sales stuff for Westmont. So being able to walk into places, talk to people about quality, talk to them about what they're looking for. If they've got a hole that they're trying to fill on their menu, maybe we could help out with that. And so it's just, yeah, just being in the hospitality like area, I love doing that and getting paid for it. It's great.
Westmont Pickles is a real Australian success story where a great idea not only seized an opportunity, but sets an incredible standard from paddock to jar. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of producers, farmers, makers, and growers, the true lifeblood of the food industry. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or email us at producerspodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au.